Welcome, everyone, to the Leadership in Quarters podcast, the interview series where leaders come to share their perspectives on different leadership topics. I'm Josh Selden, and today's guest is Aron Kolosik. Aron Kolosik is a global business leader, Fortune 50 executive, and executive leadership coach who helps high-performing professionals get and remain unstuck, reclaiming control over their careers and life. With more than 25 years of senior leadership at Procter & Gamble and Central Garden and Pet, Aron's insights into operational excellence strategy and leadership development are unmatched. Whether leading billion-dollar supply chains or coaching burnt-out executives, Aron is a gift for simplifying complex issues, unlocking new levels of clarity and performance, and inspiring tangible action. Today, he helps leaders build success without sacrificing their health, families, or faith. So welcome, Aron.
Hey, thanks, Josh. It's great to be here.
Yeah, great to have you here. So let's jump in. I know we talked about people being stuck and getting unstuck. I'd like to talk today about the 6 principles to take back that control over your life, both from the work and personal life side. But before we do that, can you help share with everyone, how do you trigger that you are stuck? Before we learn about how to get unstuck, how do you trigger that we need to take back control?
It's a great question because many times we're not aware that we've been going along doing the same things over and over. And oftentimes it takes somebody else to speak something into our lives where they look at you and they say, "Hey, Josh, are you okay?" And you're just used to doing it the same way over and over again because you just kept doing it. And we've been conditioned a lot of times to just get through it. Especially as men, it's like that's a thing of pride. Like, I got through it. And so sometimes it takes somebody else to realize that you're stuck. Sometimes it takes an assessment. So for example, when I was in my early 20s, I took an assessment, like this little quiz on a scale of 1 to 10. Where are you at spiritually? Where are you at with your family? Where are you at physically? Where are you at with your career? And I realized that I had a real big gap in my faith. It was an area that was way out of whack versus the rest. And that opened me up. So sometimes it's like a tool, or you read something, or you see something, or you hear somebody else's story, or sometimes you do know it. Like, there are times when I think there's 2 different ways to be stuck. They're stuck when you're not moving, when you're frustrated, like things aren't moving. And that one we all can think about when we think about the word stuck. But the other one is when you're actually moving, but you're not getting ahead. You can run faster, but it's almost like being stuck behind a semi on the interstate. You're like, I'm going 60 miles an hour. I'm moving, but I would like to go 80. And these guys need to get over so I could get moving. And so, like, that frustration is what many high achievers experience. It's like they know they're moving, but they know they can move faster. They're just not sure how to get that semi out of the way.
It's so important for people to know themselves. I think to that second level that you said, relying on somebody to feel comfortable enough to say, "Hey, are you sure you're okay?" is one thing, but really knowing yourself to be able to trigger and say, like you said, I am here, but I can do better. I can move faster. That's something I think a lot of people don't just step back, breathe, and really take it all in on how they actually truly are doing.
Yeah, the self-reflection was probably one of the single biggest things that we should be doing. We reflect on our performance at work all the time, but then taking the time and being quiet and being still and just reflecting on how we're doing is not something we do often enough. To your point, like, we should be taking a step back and saying what's working and what's not working in my life right now. And rarely do we do that. We just keep moving. And I think we're conditioned with all of the noise and gadgets to not sit still, when if we could just sit still just a little bit, we could see something like that where we could start to make some moves.
Yep.
It's a great point.
Let's assume now that we know we are stuck or we don't have control. We need to take control back. Can you go into what those 6 principles are to help us take control back in our life?
Yeah. So I've been 30 years in the game. I first stepped into a manufacturing facility when I was 19 years old in a polyethylene chemical plant in Clinton, Iowa. And I fell in love with manufacturing then, and I wanted to be a plant manager. But as I started to go down the journey of life, there was something that I was exposed to that helped me understand how I wanted to go further. And this first principle, I call it the law of the weakest link. And it does get back to that assessment that I talked about earlier, which is where you at physically, where you at spiritually, where you at relationally, and where you at in your career. And when we link those things together, like we often think that they're independent, but they're not. And when I took that assessment the first time and I realized that my spiritual side was low, the trainer, it was in a seminar, and the trainer said, that's all the bigger you're ever going to be is where that weakest link is. You have to strengthen that weakest link. Otherwise, your chain is always going to get broke. You think you can go further. And oftentimes we want to get further to another level of performance in business when actually the link might be in one of those other areas. It's not actually working harder at work. It's actually, you know what, I need to take care of myself physically, or I'm not in a great relationship with my spouse right now, and that feels on the rocks, but because that's there, you're not certain at work. Like these things we see typically the output of that when something tragic happens. If somebody has a heart attack, everybody says, oh, don't worry about work, just make sure you take care of your health. Or you go through a divorce and somebody says, you know what, Josh, take all the time you need. I know this is trying. We should have been spending that time ahead of that. If you really believe in this principle of the weakest link, why would you not want those things to be strong? If we believe that if it's weak, it affects your performance, then the opposite also has to be true, where if you're strong in those other areas, they're also going to affect your performance and help get you moving. And oftentimes, to get somebody unstuck, I don't look at their career. I had somebody that was on a PIP that I was coaching. It was real close to being on a performance improvement plan at work. Like things weren't going well. And as we started to diagnose it, I said, when things were working well, what were you doing? And he's like, I was training for a 10K and I'd get up and I would do, and I'm like, how about we start there first? And he's like, that has nothing to do with my performance at work. I'm like, yes, it does.
Yeah.
Because you're not being you. And so he started doing that through the game. He ended up getting to a point where he was performing incredibly well at work and he had the certainty to go find his dream job. So he literally switched to a new career because he was in a different game, all because he started working out and started doing some morning meditation. That's the weakest link concept.
Awesome.
So that's the first one. The second one is living by a code, where we talk about radical authenticity. A lot of times in corporate America, there is a lot of posturing. I think you and I might have even had a conversation about performance in the morning meeting.
Yep.
Everybody has a different level of standard of what good looks like. But we really just need to state in the facts at times. And posturing is, hey, we didn't do this. This didn't happen, but blah, 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 blah. Being real with where you're at has to be a foundation of a program moving you forward. You can't move forward at work if you don't get grounded in the reality of the situation. You can't get real in your marriage until you get grounded in the reality. You can't get real in your physical health till you're like, you know what? I think I'm doing these things, but here's the things that I really am doing, and here's the things that I'm not doing. Like, here's the data. So this level of authenticity has to play through. Otherwise, you will just keep posturing and you won't come to accept the fact that things aren't working. Because nobody wants to admit that things aren't working. We're like, no, I'm good. That's the number one thing. How you doing today, Josh? How was your week? That was good. Yeah. Great. It's like, it's great. Let's talk about where you messed up too. And so I think that's the second principle that people really start to have a conversation with, where I'm like, hey, you can't move forward until we look at all those areas of your life, all four of them, and we get real with where we're at. Which then leads to the third principle is the law of intentionality. So many times in our life, we're only intentional in one or two of the areas of life. So if we think about our careers, like we're super intentional about the work we put in there, the plans that we have in place, et cetera. And maybe we're super intentional about our physical health, like we work out. So we've got those two things. The other two areas, whether it be the spiritual side or mental health side, we don't really spend a lot of time with intentionality. And the same thing on our relationships, like where there's not a lot of intentionality. And it could be true where somebody forgets the physical and whatever that may be. But what I've found through the years is that those people who get moving and stay moving are people that have intentionality. Like they don't just drift. They're really clear on where they're at in their marriage, and they're really clear on what they want, and they're intentional about doing things to keep that marriage strong, or to keep the relationship with your children strong, or to stay in great physical health, or to be building your career and growing in this space. And I think people talk about growth mindset all the time. This is a real thing, and it's not just about one area of your life. We have to be growing in all of those areas of our life. And so drifting is a real situation too. It's easy, especially I would say when you break past your mid 30s and you're in a career and now you're making decent money, you're a little more flexible with your disposable income. It then becomes really hard to not just exist. And so that tends to create this piece of just staying the same. Eventually you start to get stuck. And so that's really where I have a big conversation on intentionality. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
Have you found areas where you feel like if as you're hearing that, where you're like, hey, I see this with people where they're not putting some of that intentionality in play?
For sure. I think intentionality is important and it gets to what we talked about earlier, even just being intentional in stepping back and assessing where you are. I think, like you said, everybody's on autopilot at some point,
Yeah.
and we're just going through the motions, going through the day, and it doesn't give you that chance to be intentional because you're just doing the same thing over and over. What I thought of, though, as you were talking about the first three principles, is how does principle one and principle three interact with each other and support each other? Because what
Yes.
I have seen in probably my professional and my personal life, when you have a weak link, like you said, you're only as strong as your weakest link, that is where you put your intentionality. How do you make it so you don't drift in the other three areas when you're being intentional in your weak area? And how do you make it so you don't just trade where your weak area is?
That's a great point. We don't want this teeter-totter effect where
Right.
it's, hey, now I'm great physically, but now my relationship's dead because I haven't done anything in
Right.
that space. And as you think about how you construct your life, so like back to the bigger picture of intentionality is like taking a big picture of, hey, here's what's working and here's what's not working. We want to make sure that we hold the fort. So like
Right.
in work, we have daily management systems. So we have process control where we want to keep those things in play. And part of the reflection has to be, okay, this is working and I don't want to sacrifice this. So here's realistically what I can make a move on because I
Mhm.
can't do it all. And so part of me with the assessment, and that's why I use that assessment in my life all the time. I literally look at it like a quarterly business review or my own personal KPI
Yep.
because I want to make sure that if I put some things in place, if I look at the 90 days ahead and I'm like, hey, this next 90 days, I really got to make some moves in my physical health. Personally, right now, I've readjusted my diet. I'm doing some things during the week that are like Sunday night to Friday afternoon that I'm making some changes there. I'm working out a little bit more. But when I do my next assessment, I want to make sure that the date nights with my wife are continuing on. So it keeps me in check because we're not perfect. Some things may slip a little bit, but the worst thing is to let that slip for a longer period of time and be unaware. So if you can take a look at your assessment and say, hey, you know what? Here's the deal. I need to start doing some things for mental health, which I think in the stress and the noise and the dopamine rush that we get in all today's world, to me, if people would spend more time in silence or just doing simple breathing techniques like Wim Hof or something like that,
Yeah.
like it's a game changer. And it's a simple thing that you can do. Wim Hof takes 10, 12 minutes to do max. And it
Mhm.
changes everything in your mental health. And so let's not try to solve world hunger when we make the intentionality. And typically what we do, to your point, is we go extreme.
Yeah.
Whereas what I would coach is how do we take the steps to get us moving first, where you have momentum. And now all of a sudden, when I go for a walk in the morning for 30 minutes, when I walk outside or I walk on the treadmill, I can do a journal. Like I journal
Hmm.
when I'm walking. You can do voice to text. I can double up. I couldn't do that in the beginning. So you can build on these habits that allow you to create some synergy with them as well.
I think as you just said all that, being intentional is important in two areas, just reinforcing what you said. One is the check-ins, and I think that's how you keep control over
Yes.
not slipping. And you have to be
Yep.
intentional because it's something extra to do that check, but it's very instrumental in maintaining the progress. And the other thing, which I see all the time in terms of being intentional, is making sure you're intentionally working on what you're setting out to work on and not more. When we go and we look
Yeah.
at the weak link or we look at what we have in front of us, we find 20 things we got to go work on. And we're like, I'm going to go tackle all those 20. Or not. We're going to half ass it, or we're going to do the bare
Yep.
minimum and not really make that progress. And I think we need to be intentional about what our actions look like and pick the most important ones, knock them out, and then go to the next ones, or else we're not going to see that progress that you're talking about.
Yeah, that's a great point. I'm just grabbing for a notebook here. So one of the things that actually my brother mentioned to me even just a few months ago, because I'm continuously learning in this game. Today's world, Chrome, if something comes to your mind, you're like, oh, let me go research this. To your point, there's so many things, and then we find ourselves working on the non-important, non-urgent tasks, and it distracts us so much. And for me, I've got this notebook here, and if something comes to my mind, we're like, oh, I'm going to go. I'm from Iowa, and so I'm a huge Caitlin Clark fan for WNBA.
Yeah.
Like, ready for her to get back. But if something comes up about that, and Chrome is the worst thing because once you start searching it, it pops up the same
Yeah.
thing. I just write it down in this notebook, and then later at night, I'm like, do I want to look at that or not? But developing that discipline to filter out the squirrel, if you will, I'm just all over the place.
Yeah.
That is a critical thing in today's world. Because to your point, we waste way more time than we think.
Yeah.
Everybody says I don't have time, but I'm like, man, when I start to take back how much time we're scrolling or how much we're researching, there's time to do these other things
It nickels and dimes you.
all
The
the
most
time.
telling thing is, I don't know if you have an iPhone, but the iPhone
Yeah,
every
you have
Sunday
screen
morning,
time.
yeah, screen time. Sunday morning, 9 o'clock every morning, and it shows you your average screen time, and you're just like, "Holy crap! I can't believe I've spent that much time scrolling." And it's never 2 hours at a time. It's 3 minutes here, and it's 5 minutes
It
there, and
is.
it adds up. It's a lot of wasted time.
And if you're working on something important, a little distraction like that takes like over 20 minutes to get back in the groove. When you're in the groove, and I think we've all been in the groove before, where you're just knocking stuff out. You're like, man, if I could just do that all the time, it's called flow. But if we could do that all the time, it'd be great. You can't do it if you're constantly distracted. That's one of the reasons why recently I've stopped taking the phone to the bathroom. I'm like, I'm leaving that at my desk.
Yeah.
Or when I'm supposed to be working on something, I'm setting that phone away. So it makes that just a little extra thing. And this is all about being intentional, being aware of your time management, all of that
Right.
stuff. I think that's just part of the game. Keep pushing. So the
Intersecond
first
the
three, you can see the time. Now I'm
exactly.
aware. I've got this weakness. I'm aware. The second
Yeah.
one, now I'm getting into the facts. Like I'm being real. Third one is now I'm starting to figure out what I want. Then principle number 4 is your stories determine your future. And oftentimes what gets in the way of what you want is your beliefs and our emotions associated with that. Emotions really just describe something that you believe. You get frustrated with your kid and you're like, why did they do that? There's an underlying belief that they should be not doing that. And it didn't meet your expectations. So therefore an emotion came out because your belief wasn't met. And our stories, I remember thinking I could never leave Procter and Gamble. And I love P&G. It's 23 years. It was my first love from a work relationship. I have so many friends. I just loved the company. But there was a time where I knew it was time for me to go, but I didn't think I could. And it was like somebody says to me, you were a vice president at P&G. You thought that you couldn't do something. I'm like, yeah, I did. I really did. It was a constraining belief in my life. It was something that I didn't think I could do. And then the opposite was true prior to that. I knew I could become a plant manager. I wanted to be a plant manager. It was my dream, again, from the time I was 19. When I saw that in a factory, I was like, I want to be that role. And I knew I could do it. But that belief carried me along the way. So we had a belief that was carrying me. So it was a story. Beliefs and stories I call the same. I had a story that I could be a plant manager. And so I was going for it. And then I had a story that I couldn't do something that was also holding me back. So the power of story in your life and in your head is big.
Yeah.
And oftentimes it gets back to the self-reflection. We're unaware of these limiting constraints that we've put on our lives. And so part of the 6 principles being unstuck is one of the reasons why I was stuck was I didn't believe that I could do anything different. So therefore, I didn't even see the other paradigm. Stephen Covey has a picture in the Seven Habits of an older woman and a younger woman in this
Right.
picture. I could only see one picture until I started to change the story. And when I started to change the story, so many more options came available to me. But those stories can be habits, they can be beliefs, they can be values based on how we're raised or where we're from. I used to tell a story that I found myself saying, which was I would meet a new team and on board, and I would say something like, I'm not the smartest guy in the room, but I listen really well. And as I went through that, I realized I was actually being negative towards myself. I didn't have to say I'm not the smartest guy. Because the fact is, I'm pretty smart. I don't think I was the smartest guy in the room, but I'm pretty sharp. But I could have just said, hey guys, one of my important values is that I try to listen really well. I want to make your dreams happen. And that won't happen if I don't listen. I could have just said that. And that would have changed the dynamic for me. But that belief in myself, I'm not the smartest guy in the room, or that statement became a limiting belief. And so what gets in the way of what we want with the intentionality oftentimes is these beliefs. And so the second part of these, like the second three principles, are really all about like beliefs. And so it starts with your stories determine your future. Number 5 is you need a tribe. And oftentimes we're created, I mean, even our educational system creates roles like valedictorian and salutatorian. We create this competitiveness, which is individualistic. You know, the fastest, most athletic guy gets the scholarship. And so we're competitive. But then when we enter the workforce, the reality is it's supposed to be more collaborative. And you and I both have experienced that. It's like the competition at different levels, especially when you're younger in the company, it's really tough. And I remember going into a meeting one time, and I was transitioning from a manufacturing or making side to the packing side. And I told a colleague, I look forward to kicking butt with you downstairs. And the person looked at me and said, I don't need your help.
Wow.
And I was like, okay. But that's so not true. If you think about it, like we all need a tribe. We need people to help speak into us, to help us see some things differently. Like you mentioned earlier, when we're stuck, if we can't self-reflect it, boy, we should have somebody else looking at it. And if you think about it, the collective brain is way bigger than the individual brain.
Yeah.
So why would we not tap into that resource to get your perspective on it, Josh, or get somebody else's perspective on it so that I can be stronger and move faster? It just makes a lot of sense, but I'm not wired that way all the time. I'm going to do it myself. Self-made man. What a lie. There's no such thing. No, there's no such thing. It always takes a community. And so I think if we would actively seek more community, we would get unstuck faster.
For sure.
That's just, I see it all the time. Because also, somebody has experienced what you're experiencing and they can give you wisdom, but probably just as important is you just recognizing that you're not the only person going through the same thing.
Yeah.
Back to number 4, the stories. You know, I'm not good enough. Why is this happening to me? And when you realize that it's not just you,
it's never
the
just
system.
you.
All right, it's never just you. So that's number 5, and then we'll stop after 6 again. But and then number 6, I think is really important, is you deserve to be happy. And I don't mean happy, joy. I don't mean everything's happy, clappy. Yay, that's not even my personality. But I think at times we think that we need to endure. We confuse grit and resiliency with truly painful situations, things that we don't like. I recently talked to a person who's been in a marriage for 21 years, and he's absolutely miserable. And I would never encourage somebody to leave a relationship or a marriage, but he needs to do something to shift the situation because he's absolutely miserable. And that being absolutely miserable over time is going to continue to make him stuck. Again, what the solution to his problem is, I don't know at this time, but I know that he needs to be intentional and he needs to go after it because he is so unhappy that generationally his family is going to look at that. He's got 2 daughters. They see it, that he's unhappy. And over time, he's just going to become less and less of himself because you're going to stop doing things because you fear the harm. you fear the pain. It's like you don't
Yeah.
touch a hot stove once you've done it. And you think through that in life, we still tend to just endure. And resiliency and grit are really important. Like we do have to work hard and we do have to get through some tough stuff, but that's more seasonal. What I'm
Right.
talking about here is if you're just in a situation where you're just completely unhappy with yourself, unhappy with the relationship, unhappy with the work relationship, the work situation, you need to do something different because you
Right.
will never solve that. Just become happy. It's not one day they flip a switch. You actually have to do something about it. And so I think for me, that played out for me when I was in COVID. I was vice president sitting in Switzerland. And because for tax reasons, I had to be in Switzerland, which when I took the assignment was not an issue. But COVID made it where I'm like sitting there for 30 days in a row in Switzerland by myself, not even going into the office. And at first I thought, oh, this is pretty cool. Introverted wise, I'm like, this is all right.
Yeah.
But I don't care how introverted you are after 30 days, you need some human action. And I realized that I was just in the situation that I was in, I was unhappy. And that was a moment where I realized that I was unhappy. I had the tribe telling me you can do some other things and allowed me to take the step that allowed my career to move forward in a new way. And I find that many of us just down and become less versions of ourselves. And man, you never become the man or woman that you could be because you just accepted this miserableness. And you probably know people that you're like, man, that person's been miserable forever. You know,
Yeah. For
nobody
sure.
really wants to be around that person. So
Yeah.
those are the next three. It's really about the stories.
It's interesting because I think as you wrap that up, it gets to the whole the devil versus the devil you don't, and the grass isn't
Yeah,
always greener, and everybody's so comfortable in their little safety bubble, even if they're not happy. They're
sure.
still comfortable because I may know I'm not going to be happy because of work or body or faith or whatever it is, but I've accepted it and I'm in this little bubble and people are afraid of change. And
Yes.
so if I accept the change, what could happen? Yeah, I could be in a better place, but I could also be in a worse place. And it's really funny. I don't remember what the book was that I read, but it says that people are more willing to take a smaller win if there's 100% of a chance that you're going to
Mm,
get it,
yeah.
or a bigger win if there's a 98% chance that you're going to get it, right? Because it's that threat of that 2% that something bad will happen that keeps
Yeah.
everybody down. And I feel like that's what you see a lot with people.
Yeah. Absolutely, man.
Yeah.
No, I totally get it.
I appreciate all of the principles that you shared with us on how to get unstuck for everybody who's listening. I know Aaron mentioned the assessments that he took, but he actually does have an unstuck assessment that you can take for him. I will add a link to that in the YouTube page that we have. And then I'll add all the other information for Aaron, any websites or LinkedIn accounts or anything like that. So you can get a hold of Aaron and email him with any questions that you might have. You can come to the YouTube page. You can like, follow, and subscribe to the page itself. You can subscribe to the podcast that's found on all the podcast platforms that we have, to my Instagram at Leading Quarters. And you can email me with any questions or ideas that you have for any future episodes at leadingquarters@gmail.com. And of course, I can also help you get in touch with Aaron if you have any questions or need anything from him. But Aaron, seriously, again, thank you. I feel like I could talk for hours about these principles with you
Sure.
and learn from your experiences and have a great back and forth. Definitely going to take these after and reflect on them and see how I can integrate them into my life. So I really appreciate it.
Of course, man. I enjoyed being here. Thanks for having me.